Can we just to move on and talk about digital transformation, because there's a lot happening in the digital space. Looking at the findings of the report, it did reveal that nearly half, 48% of legal decision makers increased their investment in digital capabilities in 2021 compared to the year before. And Jake, if I can ask you about this specifically from the education sector, because while everyone had big changes in early 2020 when the pandemic hit, few were impacted as much as the education sector, and arguably the world's biggest private schools operator like you, having to implement schooling from home so quickly, but obviously having legal and compliance issues and safeguarding issues when it comes to that. Just talk us through how that happened and what you've learned over the intervening 2 years.
Yeah, certainly an interesting period trying to get 120,000 kids online in sort of 2-week period, and in different jurisdictions, so Egypt and Saudi and Dubai, Abu Dhabi, all these different jurisdictions. So I think that the business was very, very focused on operational and how you can manage. And I mean, you've got very young kids trying to learn online and all that stuff. But it was important for us to also just start kind of see where the risks were in terms of safeguarding and, you know, can you record people and how do you get that consent and how do you make sure that people that are already frustrated with the pandemic and potentially the modality of learning won't be upset about these other potential legal implications. So it was definitely a learning experience that hopefully we don't have to do again. But fortunately, we had really good tech in the schools already. So we really benefited from that, which made our lives a bit easier.
If I could ask a similar question to you, Arturo, in terms of this digital investment. Obviously, you're a technology company first and foremost, so you have that perspective, but you also have the perspective of being the relative newbie on the panel. I think a lot of us have been here quite a while, but you've only been here a few months here in the UAE. So if you can compare what's happening here with other jurisdictions of Mexico, your home country, or anywhere else that you might have worked with.
Of course. I mean, I think the pandemic took a lot of companies by surprise, right? Luckily for us, that was not the case. We're a technology company, right? And we see that, you know, technology is at the center of everything that companies are doing right now. And we see that, you know, some years ago, people will used to see technology as a way of cutting costs, right? I don't think that's not the case anymore. Now, companies are scaling their business thanks to technology, right? And the pandemic gave us, you know, the opportunity to see how, you know, we were not really prepared to work on a, you know, remote environment, digital environment. But you know, after 2.5 years of doing so, you know, we have seen that now companies, you know, do invest in, you know, making sure the data is secure, right? Now everything is moving to the cloud. You have, you know, more cyber attacks. You have disruptions of supply chain. So technology is there to kind of support that. I do think or see that, you know, the adoption of technology in the legal sector is a little bit behind in this region in comparison to other regions I have been, you know, working before. And please take this with a grain of salt because I have been here just for a few months. But for example, in my, you know, my previous jurisdiction, I mean, we use technology both in-house, sometimes, you know, not even developed by us, but to make our life easier, right? To kind of create some sort of solution to get, you know, all of the repetitive answers that were coming to my team that were taking time out of our daily schedules to automate those, right? So created an internal chatbot that was actually answering the, you know, most common questions that come to lawyers within a company. So that will allow my team to focus on more strategic decisions instead of answering every single day, you know, the questions that get posed, like, where is the template? Can I, you know, commit to this sort of liability? You know, what are the powers of attorney that this person has? So, you know, that, you know, type of technology makes, you know, the life of a lawyer easier. We have adopted, you know, specifically in Brazil, which is a highly litigious country in which you manage, you know, thousands of lawsuits in which you have to prepare for hearings, sometimes 50, 60 hearings a month, a very smart system that will allow us to kind of, you know, simply identify the claims that were coming in, the courts that are going to be here at, you know, the percentage of success that we had at those courts, and if it will make more sense for us to settle at the early stage or continue with the litigation.
And are you using things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to refine those judgments?
Combination of artificial intelligence, data processing, and, you know, just fine tuning the data that we receive, which with as the times have evolved. I mean, the amount of data we have to to receive, read, or collate on any given day has been increasing. So we use the technology to do that. I mean, expense reports, right? How we identify someone is committing violation of internal policies by claiming expense report that are not due. We use technology to do all of that, and I see in Latin America it's more adopted than what I have seen here so far.
Mona, from your perspective, in terms of your investment in digital technologies, 48% of legal decision makers in this region are increasing their spend on technology. Can you give us some examples of the kind of investments you've made over the past year or two and the kind of impact that it's had on how you do your work as a legal department?
I mean, I think, of course, in general, the idea of moving to remote working and all of the tools that you need to be able to do that and have meetings online, I think that was the immediate focus initially, if we just look at the last couple of years. But to Arturo's point, in terms of chatbots, I think one of the more exciting developments is within the legal function specifically, developing a chatbot named Lawrence, who's an owl, who is meant to advise the business or guide the business on certain things that they may need to know in terms of the corporate standards. So commitment authorization levels, questions, basic questions in relation to compliance areas like antitrust, etc., and helps guide the business to those particular corporate standards. Of course, anything beyond that that's more in depth, more involved, won't replace the actual legal support that's there. But it does give us time to focus more on strategic partnering to the business, and it's certainly a start. I can see it continuing to evolve with time.
Fawzia, if I can ask you how you approached working from home. There are few industries that are as tightly regulated as financial services, and I'm sure that within all the city offices here in the UAE and around the globe, you've got bulletproof firewalls to help keep everything secure. And yet suddenly within 3 weeks, you've got everyone working from home on home Wi-Fi, which has very low levels of security. How on earth did you manage that? And to what extent did you work with the technology department or the IT department or the digital department, call it what you will, to try and make this work and keep your clients' data secure?
So from our end, we were following the global model that we have in place, which is allowing employees to work at least 1 day a week from home, even before the pandemic hit us. So we were quite ready in terms of embracing the working from home almost overnight on a full-time basis. So my team wasn't as sort of handicapped in terms of crossing over. The firewalls or whatever they do to keep our data secure, etc., was still in place. We have a pretty good technology around that, I would like to think. And I think for me, the challenge was more around keeping the team together in terms of breaking silos. So when, and I'm pretty old school in that way, and I need to change that, I accept. So from being able to walk the floor and speak to somebody and have a chat, etc., and pull people together to have a discussion, we were now on boxes on a screen, windows, and sort of somebody would put their camera off, somebody would put their camera on, and is it right to ask somebody to keep their cameras on because you want to see their faces and remember what they look like? Or is it wrong to do that? All of that was a bit of a mindset shift. But I think we're beyond that now. I think people are very, very comfortable in working from home and being able to switch. In fact, it's brought a lot of value in terms of being able to prove that working from home or working from work is pretty much the same. You're still as productive either ways. So from our end, the tech investment has always been also towards the client experience. So digitization for us is huge. Innovation for us on that front is huge. Clients ask for that, so they don't want to come into the offices to give across attested copies of board resolutions or what have you. They want to send it via email or scan those through. So what's the safest way to be able to ensure that that is in a form which is recognized should something go wrong? How authentic is it? Who do you use to be able to authenticate that? Do you use digital certification service providers that are recognized in the UAE and elsewhere for that purpose? And yes, we've had to cross that bridge as well. But then all of this advancement that's happening on the tech front needs to also be supported by the various court systems that are in place, because you'll all recognize that MENA is widely a civil law jurisdiction. So there is no doctrine of binding precedent. So there's no case law per se to rely on, right? So you just have to rely on, again, experiences of different regulators, experiences of different regimes, so to speak, right? So you turn towards law firms as well to ask for that, and then again, you might not get a clean opinion on that. They might say, listen, this seems to be working, it should be working, but let's just wait and see, it's still untested.
So Isabella, from the perspective of Al Tamimi, a leading law firm in this region, a 2 or 3 part question, if you'll forgive me. First of all, where are you guys spending your digital dollars, or where have you been over the past couple of years? What have you found that works? And secondly, because again, these guys here, they want to know that their data is secure, that any conversation they have with you is absolutely secure, that any information they give you is rock solid, secure. And how do you go about managing that? And the third part is, anything else that's sprung to mind over the past 2 years that I haven't thought of?
When it comes to technology, we have actually, we've been very proactive, I'm happy to say. And in fact, we introduced the working from home capability a few months before COVID pandemic hit the world. That was coincidental, of course, in a way, but that allowed us to work from home from day one, essentially. All of our lawyers got equipped in laptops and were able to access the platform. However, and I believe this is really where the core of your question, Richard, is. We needed throughout time to upgrade our security systems of the client data that we were receiving. Also, we purchased and we installed software that would allow us to receive, while working from home, sizable attachments and emails that were pretty heavy. As you can imagine, we receive a number of really thick documents, via network, sometimes in really comparable formats that make those attachments even heavier on the system. So we wanted to make sure that working from home doesn't slow down our responsiveness. And of course, the third layer to what we did was our information technology team worked very closely with our data digital team, with our expert lawyers in the field of data digital, to see again what requirements on protecting data there are, but we also improved and acquired more software to protect sensitive data of clients, to make sure that really there isn't any breach of client confidentiality. Maybe to a disappointment of some of our lawyers initially, what that meant was that we had to really make sure that lawyers don't open their personal email boxes through the system of the law firm, don't download software without authorization by the information technology team, precisely to make sure that, first of all, there isn't a virus that we would invite into the system, but also that in whatever capacity the network is accessed by our lawyers, and network of the law firm, and documentation and information of our clients, which is really the prime importance to us, gets verified by the information technology team to make sure that it's a safe way to open the file that is a bizarrely looking file, for example, or a software that we think looks very, very innocent, that potentially could give access for a third party to actually breach the security of our law firm.
And in terms of technology that actually helps you do your job, the services and the judgments that these guys are essentially hiring firms like your firm. And Arturo touched on this, the machine learning, the artificial intelligence, that isn't just an enabling technology like video conferencing or data storage, but is actually doing the job of a lawyer and helping to make decisions. Are we there yet? Are we not there yet? Will we ever get there? Or will we always need lawyers like you guys actually making those judgments? Can AI and machine learning ever replace you guys?
Well, the artificial intelligence and the machine learning is very unlikely to replace us, legal practitioners, and that's very good news. There was a point in time when I would say, yes, absolutely right.
Even the guy from IBM agrees.
Yes,
Yeah.
completely right. But there was, of course, a period of time when I think in the legal profession, being historically and even today quite a conservative profession, right? We are naturally resistant to change, I think, as lawyers. But technology is unlikely to replace us. However, we have realized over the years we need technology to help us be more efficient and to also help us be more accurate, because any type of a smallest oversight in client matters, in documentation, negotiation, any type of discussions may have really very serious negative implications on the business of our client. And what we've done then to approach that technology that is available, that has been tested by law firms internationally, is we have brought software we've tested. First of all, we've tested a number of different softwares. We've had teams allocated to different softwares. We ran a number of pilot programs with the use of softwares. And those programs allowed us to identify the softwares that we would find actually useful. Interestingly enough, different practices found different softwares useful. So for example, we've got a software that would help with the discovery process carried out by our litigation team, right? Especially for DIFC courts and international litigation, because the software is targeted towards English language proceedings much more than Arabic still, but that is already there, helping the litigation team. That said, our litigation team really is the largest team we've got in the firm. So again, lawyers still are required to do the fine-tuning, to brainstorm the outcome of that artificial intelligence product. On the non-litigious side of things, we have been using software that helps us draft contracts, and that makes some of the contract suites of documentation really more efficient for us to put together, and also software that would help us really check cross-referencing across huge suites of documentation. But again, at the end of the day, when the artificial intelligence machinery has done its job, then it's still us lawyers who sit down, do a cross-check, and then we're comfortable, and then the product goes out to the client.